Everybody. Hey. It's always good to have a full house. So I would ask you to be kind, be considerate when other people are speaking. We got a lot of folks here, so please watch the side conversations this evening. They turn in to be pretty loud, and this room, as you can get, will carry it. We've got the air conditioners in the back, so those of you who are in the corners, good choice. You're really going to be happy for those in a little bit. So we will start with, we pray, then we pledge, and then we'll do our roll call. So we will start tonight. Thank you, Stephen Bilo from O'Fallon Christian Church. Stephen is here. Come on up. Stephen is going to begin our meeting with a prayer tonight, so I would ask you to stand, remove your caps. Stephen, the floor is yours.
Let's pray. Father God, we find ourselves in a time of difficulty, a season of divide, a season of anxiousness, a layering of life that to some seems unbearable. And so we just pray tonight for patience. We pray for clarity. We pray for the truth to be told, and for those that have decisions that they can make, that they make them wisely, that they seek your counsel, and that we, at the end of the night, walk out together as a community, striving for the best. We love you, and we thank you for the opportunity of living in a country that allows this kind of participation, so that we can share our hurts, our griefs, our concerns, and those that we elect listen. We thank you again for all that you do for us, the blessings you provide, even in crazy times. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Councilwoman Schneider to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. I got to tell you, that sounds pretty cool with all of you in here saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please call the roll?
Councilman Cronin.
Here.
Councilman Brazel.
Here.
Councilman Hammond.
Here.
Councilman Elam.
Here.
Councilman Hollander.
Here.
Councilwoman Schneider.
Here.
Councilman White.
So we will start tonight with public presentation from St. Charles County Executive Steve Ellman. Bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. I would like to go ahead and take this opportunity to kind of update you on what's been going on the last 2 weeks. As you know, we had a rather interesting meeting 2 weeks ago, and a lot has happened since then. The good news, well, if there can be good news surrounding this situation, is that we were able to get Marine Lands Corporal Jarrett Schmitz's name engraved on the Wall of Honor out at Veterans Park. I was hoping that we would never have to do that again. But I think we've had about 5 deaths just in the time that I've been. Had the honor of serving as county executive, and I hope that's the last one. But I was able to show this to his mom and dad Saturday, and they were quite pleased. And I thought that I just need to thank everybody in the county for the way we handled that situation last year. I'm sure everybody here was just very proud of our people and the respect that they showed for a young man who made the ultimate sacrifice. So the second thing, if you remember last week or 2 weeks ago, we had the people from Heritage, and I want to report that the demolition permit has been issued for that home in Heritage. They've been removing appliances and cutting utilities since last Friday. Demolition is scheduled to begin this Friday and is supposed to be completed in 1 week. So hopefully next meeting I can report that that building is down. Now, we met here on a Monday. I was on a Wednesday that Joanne and I went to the to Jeff City for the Medal of Valor ceremony for Officer John Gresco, one of our police officers, who received the statewide Medal of Valor for saving a life in the last, actually in this year. There was on Pittman Hill Road, and there was a creek that was flooding, and a guy was in the middle of the road with the creek coming up all around him. And right before the car was swept away, Officer Greco was able to go ahead and reach out and grab him at some risk to his own safety. And for that, he received the Medal of Valor. But what was interesting as well was while we were there, we were able to meet the new director of the Department of Health and Senior Services, Donald Kaueroff. He was on his first day on the job, and Joanne and I welcomed him to Missouri, and 10 minutes later asked him for a meeting to talk about this whole issue that was the subject of the meeting 2 weeks ago, and I assume is the reason most of these people are here today. We actually, we were able to set up a meeting with him, but it wouldn't be for another week. Later that week, Jefferson County announced a new policy, and we called the Director of Public Health there and asked under what authority they were doing that, and they admitted they had none. But they felt desperate. They felt they had to do something. And we then actually met with the school superintendents on Friday to discuss the quarantine rules. There was a consensus among them, that is the superintendents from all of our districts, that we needed to change the rules and allow students under quarantine to return to class under certain circumstances. And not only myself, but my staff and the Director of Public Health agreed that was a good idea. So we went ahead and sent a letter. Actually, it was on Wednesday. We talked to him on the phone first about everything that had been going on. Then we sent a letter to Mr. Kauerhoff, and this is the letter that we sent, and I'm sure it's difficult to read, but I will tell you that it basically asked for permission to go ahead and do our own modified quarantine. We asked him in the last sentence to please give us a response by 5 o'clock on Friday. And about, 2 o'clock on Friday, Joanne sent a reminder to Mr. Kauerhoff, and she said that the county executive asked me to reach out to you concerning your response to his letter. A response by the close of business today would allow us the weekend to craft the policy within any comments or conditions you would place on our request, Joanne. So we were very anxious, and we were hoping that he would simply say, sure, go ahead and do it. And if he had, we were hoping to go ahead and institute that policy, the policy that the superintendents and us had agreed on. We were hoping to implement it today. Now, what we got, I guess could be good news, could be bad news, but what he responded, and this was on Friday, he said, Joanne, we are hoping to formalize an order early next week based on a series of internal meetings we conducted this week. Our goal is to conduct a statewide call with LPHAs, that's local public health authorities, and schools within the next 10 days to discuss our position on quarantine. The goal is to communicate our plans during a statewide forum to ensure consistency in messaging. Now, again, if he'd have just said, go ahead, we would have. And I guess it's a disappointment that he didn't say just go ahead, but I assume there's a reason that he didn't. And what I'm anticipating from this particular communication is that they are in the process of coming up with some sort of modified quarantine. Now, will it be suitable to everybody in this room? Will everybody like it? I hope so, but maybe they will, maybe it will, and maybe it won't. But we'll have to see. But this is the opportunity for people who like the policy the way it is to let the Department of Health and Senior Services know, and for the many, many people who do not think it's a good policy and would like to see more local control, either by us or by the school boards, this is the opportunity to contact Mr. Kauroff and let him know your wishes. So, I went ahead and responded to this saying, well, you know, that's great, but please get on this and get it done, because there's people out there that are very concerned and in a hurry to get this resolved, and we need to get as many kids back in school as quickly as we can. I went to a meeting about an hour later, and the governor was there at a ribbon cutting in St. Charles, talked to him about this and told him, listen, whatever you're going to do, please expedite it, because again, we've got people that are very interested in this. We need to get the kids in school as quickly as we can. And that was on Friday. And then on Saturday, I actually saw the Attorney General at the funeral home and asked him about it, and he was aware that this is under discussion. So I know for sure it's under discussion. I'm hoping that it'll result in a greater flexibility for the school districts and for us. And this is an opportunity for people to weigh in and make a difference if they feel strongly about this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So with that, we'll move on to conditional use permits. We'll start with Bill number 4992.
Bill number 4992, requested by Mike Hurlbert, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance granting conditional use permit CUP 21-14 for a conference event lodging center to Edgewood Highway 94, number 2, LLC, and 0 Church Street, LLC, property owner and applicant.
So Robert Myers is here from Planning and Zoning to be sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, Robert, the floor is yours.
Certainly. My name is Robert Myers, Planning Zoning Division Director for St. Charles County. And as you stated, this is a conditional use permit request for a lodge sorry, make sure I got the addresses correctly.
Church in Jackson.
I'm sorry, yeah, 5570 Highway 94 South, located adjacent to the city of Augusta. And the purpose is to authorize the operation of a conference event lodging center, to be called Hoffman Lodge, with related guest services, and designed to be in keeping with its location within the Augusta American viticultural area. As you may know, Augusta is the earliest viticultural area designated by the U.S. government. The conditional use permit includes 72 acres of 2 parcels, totaling 77 acres. There's a related rezoning request on your agenda tonight, and there was a second conditional use permit request that was related to this for a helicopter pad. But for the purposes of the audience, I want to let you know that that application has been withdrawn. So on tonight's agenda, you just have a rezoning to agricultural district to agricultural tourism district and a conditional use permit for a lodge. The primary use of the property would include overnight lodging with 60 guest rooms and an indoor event space. And the lodge would incorporate a host of services for guests, including a restaurant, swimming pool, sauna, steam room, and yoga room, hair care, skin care, nail salon, etc. Also, outdoor recreation areas such as walking trails and a pickleball court. In conformance with the development standards of the Agricultural Tourism Zoning District, the proposed uses would be located in the center of the subject property, with no more than 7% of the site developed. So again, it's 72 acres located in the center of the property with no more than 7% of the site allowed to be developed. Existing forested areas depicted in the concept plan that's in your packet, those would remain undisturbed and serve as screening and buffering from adjacent streets and residences. These restrictions are intended to reduce land use impacts for neighboring homes. Also, you have architectural renderings in your packet that show how the proposed structure conform with agricultural district standards for building height, maximum roof pitch, and materials for exterior cladding. I would like to add, as an additional note, that St. Charles County adopted in 2012 an agricultural tourism land use plan. And that land use plan led to the adoption of what's called now the Agricultural Tourism District in 2013. That agri-tourism land use plan was formally folded into our master plan. So in our master plan, the agricultural tourism land use plan, designates this particular site for a village development. In other words, agricultural tourism district development, but instead of a rural use, it's more of a village concept. And that was designated for this particular site. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on August 18th. There were 3 speakers in support, 1 opposed, and 7 concerns. We also had 1 letter in support, 12 opposed, and 5 concerns. The Planning and Zoning Commission, after the close of the public hearing, in consideration of the conditional use permit criteria, recommended 7 in favor and 0 against approval with conditions for this application. I would say that this afternoon we received a narrative description from the applicant that modified some of the, or specified the hours of operation for Amplify Music. And they're looking at 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday. They also noted that they're not looking at having large outdoor gatherings. It's really, again, oriented towards the lodging guests. They would have small gatherings in keeping with lodging guests outdoors. That's their plan. With this tonight, we have the applicant, David Lisinski, from Colleen Studio Architects, and also 1 or more other guests as well.
Does anybody have any questions for staff on this?
I have questions, but I don't know if they're pertaining to Robert. On the rendering and the plot plan, I just want to go over a couple things as far as setbacks with the woods. You get the woods that we're going to have a covered area remain, things like that some of the folks out there are asked for. So
Sure.
do you want to talk about that now, or wait till they get a drawing up there, or should we have Cochran come up, or what?
Whatever you prefer. I can answer.
Can you put the drawing up there, the footprint? Where's the engineer? You want to, did you guys got something ready, or?
To keep scrolling, there's a concept plan that's included in your packet.
Yeah, I was keep going.
So
Okay,
with that,
so
again, before we get started, I'll have you be sworn in real quick.
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Before we get started, is he going to speak as well? Are you going to
Yes.
speak as well? So, sorry, this is we all swear in, we all play here. So raise your right hand, please.
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Gotcha. Mr. Brazel, do you want to address questions first, or do you want him to do his presentation and then?
Go ahead, sir, if you got a presentation.
I have nothing more than the rendering there.
Okay, so there were some, Robert, there's quite a few of stipulations, and I believe it said that the wooded lot, the woods between the residential houses and the perimeter of the property, that you plan on leaving that wood, those woods?
That's correct.
And then what is the width of that, and it's going to be, that will be locked into a deed restriction on tree preservation? Robert?
It would be part of the, if it's attached to the ordinance and also referred to as part of the ordinance packet, that would be one of the conditions for approval of the lodge. And so tree stands that are showing on the concept plan as part of the buffering for neighbors, those would need to remain in place, again, to help reduce land use impacts for neighbors of the homes.
So is it locked in though, so in 10 years they don't cut all the trees down, because Hoffman likes cutting down trees?
It would be required, yes, those would have to remain, and in fact, any dead or dying trees would need to be replaced.
Okay. What's the width of that, sir? Do you know?
I'm sorry.
The width? Or is it just all the trees that are existing?
Can we scroll to the overall site plan? There, that'll work. So, I mean, as far as the width goes, obviously the width varies of the trees there. The trees are the dark green. We anticipate leaving the perimeter trees as is. Whatever we need to do on the top of the hill there to make the development, we will, but there's no plan to just come through and wipe out all the perimeter trees there, no.
Okay, so that's locked in, right, Robert? The tree preservation, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's a concern that residents had. The 60-room hotel that you guys are proposing, or Robert, this is a question for you. What kind of processes if they want to double the size after the fact? Do they got to come back to us, or can they just do it?
Right. The conditional use permit ordinance has a provision that an applicant, any approved conditional use permit, they can increase the footprint, I believe it's 10%, no more than 10%. If it's more than 10%, if there's more of a 10% change, you would have to come back before the Planning and Zoning Commission in this body. So there is a little bit of wiggle room, but actually, because of the 7% limitation for development of the tract, there's not really that much room for additional rooms to be built or additional footprint.
Okay.
It's pretty limited.
For the most part, everyone's pretty happy with this. It's just that you got to, in a real community where we've got small towns, Defiance, Augusta, you got to move slow, okay? You can't just throw all this stuff out there. And the helipad was way too much, way too invasive, the boat and all this other stuff. And so if it's 60 rooms, that's comfortable for now. It also helps people from drinking and driving, so there's not a lot, it takes some of that off the road, which is a positive.
Sure.
So I think on the overall concept, the plan is a positive. So, I don't really have a problem with it. People were concerned at first, but I think the concern through these public processes is making people more comfortable.
For sure.
Any other questions for the applicant? Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, sir.
I feel bad you got sworn in for absolutely nothing. But you look good.
I'm sure we'll be back.
There you go. All right, with
Could I
that,
just
yes, ma'am.
say, if you looked at the COP meeting, I think that covered a lot of the issues that we would normally be asking about today. There was a lot of discussion about different restrictions that might be placed on it, what the plans were, address the concern about Highway 94 and whether or not the entrance to or exit from the facility would be dangerous. And I know one of the conditions was a highway plan, what do you call that, the highway?
Traffic study.
Traffic study, yeah. And that would be made available to everyone, and then if there were any changes that needed to be made to that area, that the developers would bear the expense of that, not taxpayers.
That's correct.
So I think that was a really good presentation. I know there were a lot of people who were concerned, and I imagine some of them are here to speak against it, but I thought the presentation that was done then was very extensive, and I know a lot of questions were answered and a lot of concessions were made to add certain things into the plan. And I know this is just a conception plan. This is not a detailed rendering.
It is, and to his point, this is a multi-step process.
Right.
Planning and zoning, we're at the commission. We have to do a traffic study, we have to get MoDOT approval, and a lot of other approvals as we proceed here. So we're basically at step one. So we understand that in order to enact the plan that you're going to approve tonight, we have to do a traffic study, we have MoDOT approval. I mean, that's all contingent upon that, and we understand that. We're just at step one here.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Comment-wise, at the Planning and Zoning, which I'm a member of, we had a good portion of the town of Augusta here, and they had a lot of questions, and I think the Planning and Zoning Commission actually kind of ease their minds on a lot of those questions. And it's not often that you get a 7-0 vote at planning and zoning, and that's what the vote was. So I think that, I think the people there are far more comfortable than they were, 2 weeks ago.
All right, so we'll ask you to just hang around for a little bit.
Sure, thank you.
Find a space by the door. So with that, we're going to open it up for public comment. Any individual supporting or opposing the application is invited to share their comments with the council. Council staff will call you forward one at a time. For each speaker that's already submitted a card. Upon the conclusion of the individual comments, please remain at the podium for any follow-up questions from council, staff, or the applicant. We encourage you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. Should any speaker have shared the same information that you are going to share, feel free to say ditto, and the record will reflect that your opinion has already been stated. So with that, our first speaker is?
Arnie Dienoff.
Excuse me.
Mr. Dean.
Oh, sorry.
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dienoff, County Public Advocate. First of all, overall for this bill in this application, CUP 2114, the conference center, the hotel, and the winery venue, I'm for, because it's going to spur economic development and bring outside tourists and really boost our economy for St. Charles County. I, however, would like to make a matter of public record several issues that I'd like the council to consider and staff to make sure that we're not causing major accidents or causing people to have some serious physical ailments or deaths with backup of traffic on 94 and other county arterial roads. So that's the first one, is the traffic backups. How are we going to prevent accidents going into this area? The toll on county and state highways, in my opinion, the developer needs to pony up and be part of the community, and he's making a huge impact on the town of Augusta and unincorporated areas of St. Charles County. He needs to make some improvements not only to county roads, but also to State Route 94. State Route 94, as we all know, is very curvy, has a lot of dangerous issues. The Augusta Fire Protection District, our county police, and the Missouri Highway Patrol respond to accidents weekly and especially on the weekends. There's been a lot of deaths and a lot of people go to the hospital, a lot of life flights of flying people out to either St. Charles or to bigger hospitals over in St. Louis County. As we all know, alcohol and huge dangerous curves do not go together. So what exactly is the developer and what is the county going to ensure to prevent that we're not going to have these accidents and possible deaths? Public safety. The wine district has been taxing upon our St. Charles County Police Department. There's only one deputy that's dedicated to the Augusta region on the weekends. And I believe that this developer is making this investment. I believe that he needs to pay into our general fund and support our county police. We want to ensure that people aren't drinking and driving and aren't going to turn somebody else's family upside down in an instant's moment. The quality of life for the village of Augusta. There were many speakers at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting that were opposed or had concerns about this development on their quality of life, on their small town rural living. And I think that we need to ensure that they're being taken care of and that their property values are being taken care of in terms of a buffer zone to ensure that we reduce any noise concerns. And I believe that the developer needs to invest in community infrastructure, such as water, sewer, the fire protection district. Because of this hotel and the number of people coming to this area, it's going to increase the calls to our St. Charles County Ambulance District and to the Augusta Fire Protection District. It's going to increase calls to our county police, Missouri Department of Transportation, our county highways and bridges, because there's going to be more maintenance that's going to be needed in that region. The Tree Preservation Act of our codified county code, I don't believe that after reviewing their plans that they're meeting the 20% minimum requirement to make sure that the environment is steady and stable and to make sure that we're not cutting down the large trees to create a buffer between the hotel and the conference center and the adjoining residents in the village of Augusta. So we need to look at those buffer zones and the noise. Again, I'm for the project, but we really need to make sure that our traffic safety is adhered to, that we provide our police chief off to my right with the adequate support of patrol officers, DUI, traffic safety enforcement officers, because with all the buying up of the wineries and building of the golf course and attracting a lot of people, we're going to need public safety, and we're going to need to make sure that we don't have drunk drivers, and to make sure that 94 is safe and our county arterial highways. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone have any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thanks for coming. Next speaker.
Christina Kolczewski.
Christine.
Do you solemnly swear that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Go ahead.
My name is Christina Kolczewski. I'm here on behalf of myself and also my parents, who are, actually, I've asked them to wait outside because of the crowded room.
I understand.
Okay, I guess I will bend down here. So I think Mr. Brazel said it right. This is a small community, and this project is moving very, very fast, and there needs to be some consideration here. And in general, I think it would be a good idea for things to slow down a bit. Don't have high hopes that that will happen here, but I would put that up for the city, for the county's consideration. The first thing I wanted to speak to was the safety, was the road. So I have talked to the area engineer for St. Charles County. What was alluded to here tonight, but was not alluded to at the night of the Planning and Zoning Commission, is that the applicant pays for the traffic study, not the state of Missouri. What happens is there will be a scoping study where at that time it will be decided all of the details that will go into that study. I would ask the applicant to consider to get the stakeholders, namely the people who live in Augusta, get their feedback. We know the road. The only way to force that to happen is for the council to require that. The state of Missouri does not do anything to seek out public comment. You can call them, you can track them down, but it's not required. We can also ask for a copy of that study, but we have to petition for it under sunshine laws. So in the spirit of transparency and full disclosure, if Mr. Hoffman truly wants to make this a win-win for both the community and his business, it seems like it would only make sense that for the safety of the community and his own guest, he involve the community. That can be through an open comment period at the scoping study, which is the most important, and then a review and comment period on the results of that study as well. That is like foremost, I think, in most people's mind, especially mine. My parents happen to have a house right off of Schindler. It's extremely close to the entrance that they plan to put off of Highway 94. And during busy times, we have a lot of concern about traffic backing up, coming from St. Louis, waiting to make that left-hand turn into that development. I don't know if you're familiar with that part of the road, but it goes up a hill and down a hill. And the area where they want to put that entrance, you could have traffic back up, people come around a blind curve and go into the back of somebody's stopped vehicle at 60 miles an hour, and it could be pretty tragic. So that is one of the most important things. Some other considerations for you to think about. So first off, this is a new fact, this amplified music. Mr. Hollander, you were actually very instrumental in talking about that at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I think that's one of the things that made people quite happy. If I remember correctly, I believe we said 8 o'clock during the week and 9 p.m. on weekends. And now, less than 24 hours before this meeting, the applicant has petitioned for 9 p.m. and 10 p.m., which is a little bit disingenuous. I would ask the council to go back to the original Planning and Zoning Committee recommendation of 8 p.m. during the week and 9 p.m. on weekends for amplified music. There's property that is right next to this development, and I can tell you from personal experience, as you can see, sound carries. I can tell you from personal experience, my parents who live off of Schindler Road, at the end of Schindler Road, can hear music from Mount Pleasant Winery, 3-4 miles away. So I know the town of Augusta will absolutely be hearing this music 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. It just doesn't make sense, and it's also not what was recommended by the Planning and Zoning Committee. Speaking of the Planning and Zoning Committee, yes, it was a 7-0 vote, but what was neglected to mention was that 3 people did vote to put this not necessarily on hold, but to have further study on this before it was approved. I think that needs to be said here, that it did not just sail through by any means. There was a lot of discussion, and I think what made people okay with it were the concessions that were made. A couple other things I think you need to think about: environmental. The city of Augusta used to have septic tanks. They went to a lagoon system many years ago where the gray water goes to. This development is going to nearly double the population of the city of Augusta. 60 rooms times 4 people per room. It's 300 people in Augusta. Is that system really designed, which by the way is right by the Katy Trail, is it really designed for 2x capacity? I understand that's what the applicant wants to use. Hopefully, they've thought through that for all of our sakes, anybody who wants to use the Katy Trail and those residents of Augusta as well. Groundwater, fire, all of those considerations, I haven't heard any discussion on that. Finally, on the community impact, thank you very much, Mr. Brazel, for fighting for our trees. That's very important to the city of Augusta. We really appreciate that. But also lighting. There's been no discussion about lighting. Can the council please ask the applicant what their plans are around lighting so that we do not have a big box type development with all kinds of lighting up the sky? People like their peace and quiet out in Augusta, as well as their clear, dark night skies. Hopefully that's part of the plan, and we can all agree on that, but would ask that you give that some consideration. And then also the helicopter, I know they have said no helipad, but will they also promise that even on a grassy area, they will not be having helicopters take off and land as well? So basically, no helicopters. Mr. Hoffman did write a letter to the, open letter to the city of Augusta, telling them no helipad ever, so that should be extended to no helicopters ever. So finally, I guess at a high level, to summarize, again, on the traffic study, would ask that you put some things in place to ensure that there's some sort of mechanism for community feedback on that and community review on that. And then also, I guess they would just ask the developer to think about the stakeholders. Open letters have been written and posted on the Augusta Facebook site, but comments were turned off. Why are you so scared of hearing from your stakeholders? We can help you. The people from the area know the area. There's people that have concerns. Address those concerns. That's all, thank you.
Any questions or comments for the applicant or for the speaker?
I would just like to state that the county has very strict lighting requirements, that all lights have to be downcast. They can't leave the property, so I don't think you're going to have any problems with the lighting.
Okay, that's good to hear.
The other thing I'd point out is, you made record, I lived off Shrewsbury for 12 years.
Okay,
and
as
so-
did my dad for a while.
Yeah, so we're right across the ridge from each other.
From Schindler, yeah.
And we do hear the bands, we hear
Yep.
Montel and
Yep.
so forth, and it's just, the way I look at it, it's a way of life living out there, and it's not, it doesn't annoy me. You know, I'll be in my deer stand, I hear music in the fall, and it's just what it is. I believe that. Now, sometimes if they get obnoxious and play too much, you call them, or I make a call, and they'll tone it down. The other thing is on the time frames, we went through this with that barn by in your district, whatever. We can't restrict a business. All the wineries can play on the weekends till 10 and till 9 during the week. We can't tell one business that, oh, you can do that, but you can't do that. That's completely unfair to that one business. So I believe, I had nothing to do with the time frame being moved to 10, but I believe that it's only fair that we do that to them if everybody else is playing till 10. So that's what I would say about that. I don't know about what was put in the plan and zoning. I didn't know it was moved, but I do think it's got to be equal business opportunity for everyone, and that would be my answer to that.
I guess my comment to that would be that you may feel that way about the music, but not everybody out there feels that way about the music, so I guess that's for the council's consideration. And also, I don't understand why, it's certainly not an unusual concept to put different regulations on new businesses.
Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker?
Final speaker.
All right. Any other questions or comments about this particular issue? So with that, it's going to conclude the public comment portion of this conditional use. We will vote on this in 2 weeks, assuming that nothing gets tabled. So in 2 weeks is when we'll hear this again. So thank you. So we're up to conditional use permit table bill number 4985. Is there any action to be taken on that, Mr. Cronin?
I've been talking to county staff, city of Wentzville, and the applicant. I'd like to keep that on the table. We're making a little bit of progress, and so we'll try to get this through our next meeting.
Sounds good. So with that, that'll bring us up to public comments. So for those of you who have not been to a county council meeting, first of all, welcome. It's good to see you. We're pushing the limits these past few days, so I think we're going to look at building new chambers. I'm just kidding. You just look at the chief of police, and security concerns are just going off in his head right now. So here's how public comment works. Whenever a subject is breached, we will do 3 speakers for, 3 speakers against on that particular topic, and we'll rotate them. So we'll do 1 for, 1 against, or vice versa, as we get through those 3. You have 3 minutes in which to speak. At the end of that 3 minutes, you'll hear a beep, beep, beep. That means your time has ended. I will cut you off at that point. Thank you for coming, and invite you to have a seat, and we'll move on to the next speaker. We have a lot of speakers tonight on a lot of different topics, so we will get started right away. And who are we hitting off with, Claire?
We'll start with the resolution concerning COVID and support. Lindy Williford.
Linda, you don't have to be sworn in. You've been here before, you already know.
Yes.
I was just saying, for the folks who were, conditional use permits, public record, we swear in. On these, you're not going to get sworn in. So with that, Linda, you're
Can I
up.
swear? I'm just kidding.
I would prefer you not. You're on TV. So there you go.
It's kind of funny. Lindy Williford.
Ooh, okay, good evening. My name is Lindy Williford. I just got something hot off the presses, and once again, this mama is mad. About 10 minutes ago, we finally received some data that we have been asking your health department for repeatedly. We finally had to sunshine it. This request asked how many students were quarantined in 2020 and 2021, and how many of those quarantine students resulted in a confirmed positive during their close contact quarantine. You guys ready for this? 29,372 of our kids were quarantined in 2020 and 2021. 29,372 of kids in your community. Of those quarantined, 1.28% tested positive. 1.28%. You've got to be kidding me. I'm shaking, I'm mad, because this really makes me mad. Mr. Ellman, I would like to address you tonight. You have consistently said your hands are tied by a state statute when it comes to these quarantines, but we all know that you have discretion. And we know this because you've shown this discretion everywhere else in this county except with our schools. Watching you do this, it really makes me wonder where your loyalties lie, and they certainly do not seem to lie with the children of this community. Do your loyalties lie with DESE? Maybe the NEA? With all due respect, Mr. Ellman, neither of those agencies elected you. We all did. Forcing our healthy children who can barely support the weight of their own backpack to carry the burden of community health is damaging and wrong. 29,000 kids suffered last year. 29,000. Our children in our schools are not going to be able to recover from a second year of this nonsense. Our schools' ratings are already dropping. Do we want to be a county that doesn't have good schools? The fallout of your health department's decisions will have a ripple effect and will be felt for years to come in this whole community. I'm asking you one more time for you to adhere to the appropriate laws and do what's right for our children in our county. Our parents will have no choice but to pursue all remedies available for them in this free country in which we live. It has been said that freedom isn't the ability to do what we want, it's the ability to do what we ought. What we ought to be doing right now is taking care of our health and the education of our children. And we, the parents, decide what's best for our children, not you.
I get it, guys. Hang on. We got more. If you applaud a half hour after every speaker, we'll be here till like 3 in the morning. Next speaker.
Nancy Zellner.
Nancy.
Good.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Nancy Zellner. I'm a voting resident of Councilman White's district. I have extended family members that were born and raised on Main Street, St. Charles, and were the grandchildren of machine workers at the American Car and Foundry Company. I've been a resident of St. Charles for nearly a decade, and my husband and I have chosen to live here and raise our family here to invest in the community long-term. St. Charles County is a great community with so much to offer to current and future generations. We have a growing economy, great natural resources, wonderful public programs and facilities, especially for young children. and important regional historical landmarks. One of the foundations of a great region is the sense of community, the sense of being responsible and dedicated to one another. Some of the greatest moments in our country have been defined by us coming together to preserve our freedoms and our communities, but with freedom comes obligations and responsibilities. The individual choices that we make and the actions that we take impact others. Rather than working against one another in our own best interests, we need to come together and support one another through this unprecedented time. We have to work for freedom as a community. Many of the public comments that have been made at this very podium recently have revolved around freedom, but what freedoms are we talking about? The freedom to get sick or possibly die? The freedom to infect others and possibly risk our health? In an environment of low vaccination rates and often absent or weak COVID mitigation measures, the main freedom is actually afforded to the virus itself. We don't want to afford this virus the freedom to continue to spread. No one wants to wear a mask or distance socially from others or quarantine, but these are part of a layered strategy to control the spread of a novel virus. The intent of quarantines is not to be malicious. It's to stop the spread of a virus that has affected, dramatically changed or even ended the lives of many people, some people that I know personally. As a community, we should know our strengths and listen to the experts. The way to keep kids safely in schools is not to remove quarantine provisions by the local health department. We must implement layered prevention measures and enable our health department to guide this process. The proposed Resolution 21-09 erodes our community's public health infrastructure. How are we going to slow down the virus for the entire community's safety? How can we have freedom when we're willing to risk the health and safety, both short and long term, of our community residents and young learners? As local elected officials, you have the opportunity to lead by example in a way that promotes and protects the health of the 50,000 children in our county schools. Big, messy problems like the current pandemic require government intervention, and we hold our elected officials to a higher standard. I implore you to recognize the concerns of many of your constituents and not pass the proposed resolution or others that seek to further erode the health and safety of this great county. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hang on. So just so we're clear, this is public comment, not crowd participation, right? So I'm telling you that because when someone is speaking, whether you agree with them or you disagree with them, I would ask for you to please remain quiet during public comment, right? If you'll do that, that's okay. You don't have to applaud for that. You don't have to even like it. I'm just asking you to be polite. No, sir, it's not audience participation time. No questions from here. This is not audience participation time. We have public comment. If you filled out a card, we'll call your name, you'll come up to speak. Next speaker.
Brenda Webb.
Good evening, I'm Brenda Webb, and I signed up to support the resolution regarding CV-19 quarantines. We are not in support of any more mass quarantines on our children. They need to stop. And we're not for any federal overreach unconstitutional mandates for vaccines or anything else. And we depend on you, and we're relying on you to protect our freedoms, our lives, and our jobs, all of it. Okay, you may remember, I don't know if that'll come up. Last week we had some display boards of the hospitals, local hospitals, the empty parking lots three Sundays ago. I drove by basically all of them. The parking lots were essentially, maybe half full, and that's the whole hospital. The emergency room parking lots were not packed. That's St. Joe, Barnes Jewish, and that's actually the emergency room. It's a small parking lot, and behind the hedges you can see some empty spots right there. St. Joe, Lake St. Louis, and that's another one, a whole empty parking lot behind. The parking garage was empty, multiple levels. St. Luke's, emergency parking, pretty empty. St. Luke's parking garages essentially empty. And that was like 2 o'clock when I was there Sunday afternoon, visiting hours, basically for family members. And here's Mercy again. Pretty much the parking garage was empty, all of them, in the afternoon on Sunday. So you may remember a video. Oh, I didn't bring my phone. This is Dr. Ezeki from Illinois. She was the health director last year. I assume she still is. And this is her video that I had played explaining how they count COVID deaths in Illinois. Okay, let me just play it.
Definition of people dying of COVID. So the case definition is very simplistic. It means at the time of death, it was a COVID positive diagnosis. So that means that if you were in hospice and had already been given, a few weeks to live, and then you also were found to have COVID, that would be counted
After
as
they
a COVID
died.
death. It means that if, technically, if
Thank you,
even if
Brenda.
you
Okay. So I just ask you to, vote, pass this resolution.
Thank you.
And
Amy
remember,
Robertson.
remember that cross.
Thank you, Brenda.
Here, I'll show you. It's not broken, remember.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Councilman Brazel, Councilman Cronin, this evening you plan to present a resolution which would effectively eradicate the health department's ability to contact, trace, and enforce quarantine for students who have tested positive or have had close exposure to a person who has COVID. This would instead leave the role in the hands of school boards. I'm not going to stand here and list off, Mr. Brazel, I'm speaking to you. If you could look in my direction, that would be greatly appreciated.
I'm writing down the notes so I can retract it
Thank
when you're
you.
lying right now. okay?
This would instead leave the role in the hands of school boards. I'm not going to stand here and list off all the reasons you shouldn't do this, but I am going to propose that you consider a different resolution. Hear me out. I propose that you create a resolution which would create a task force consisting of representatives from both sides of the aisle who are willing to listen and seek compromise. This would be individuals who are seeking to have for their side to be heard, but understand that there are two sides to every argument. This task force should include medical professionals, school administrators, possibly school nurses, teachers, and of course, parents. The defined purpose of this task force would be to seek to create resolutions that meet the needs of those who feel limited or stripped of their rights due to COVID mitigation, as well as those who need to live in a community that is safe for them despite whatever medical vulnerabilities they may have. This community has been ripped apart by something that never should have been political in nature. Gentlemen, I implore you to please bring your community back together. Our children are watching, and the model being provided is not a good one. At the last meeting, children were present when they were able to watch grown adults yelling, banging on the pulpit, and name-calling. At school board meetings, there has been booing, heckling, and yelling. And for what? To get the upper hand in a war that doesn't even need to exist? Please know that I am not suggesting that only one side of the aisle is guilty of engaging in this type of behavior. I'm simply stating that this is behavior that has been observed at meetings where topic of discussion is what is best for our children. Our children need and deserve better than what we as a community are giving them. They deserve to see us modeling problem-solving and conflict resolution skills, and they deserve to see us modeling listening and responding skills that are appropriate. They deserve to see us showing them that it is okay to agree to disagree and still seek understanding of the other side. COVID and masking and quarantines and vaccines aren't going to be what kills our children. The divisiveness, hatred, and anger being fostered by this debate is the true infection that is ultimately going to destroy our children, and it has to stop now. One thing we can all agree upon is that we are all here because we love our children, and we want to protect them at all costs, whatever that may be defined for us as individuals. That is the common ground we have, and that's where we need to start. Their side wants to protect their right not to comply, their right to decide for their own children, and their right to...
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
That is your time.
Judith Moorfield.
Hang on. Say again?
Judith Moorfield.
Judith Moorfield? Here she comes.
My husband and I are St. Charles residents for the past 27 years. Can you hear me back there? Yeah. Okay. Why I'm here, I'm basically just interested in the truth. We all have opinions, but I'm interested in the truth. I'm a trained, educated social worker who used to work with abused and neglected teens, but my training included knowing what constituted child abuse. But really, you don't need that kind of training to identify or recognize it when it's right in front of you. So for instance, if a parent leaves their baby in dirty diapers for 6 to 7 hours every day, none of us would probably contest that it is a form of child abuse. And the parent would be charged with child abuse. What's this got to do with face masks? Within 10 minutes of using a mask, it really needs to be changed because of the bacteria collected within that time period. So if a child has to change their mask every 10 minutes to have it be sanitary, that means about 40 more masks per student. I don't know how many students there are, but that's a lot of masks. But even if they get to change their masks every 10 minutes, who's going to pay for that? And who's going to keep track of the time it's on Johnny's face or Susie's face, Jimmy's face, etc.? Because if you don't allow the child to change their mask, it is a form of child abuse. Have any of you had a mask that has been worn for 10 to 15 minutes, let alone 7 hours, analyzed under a microscope to determine the level of bacteria in it? You would be appalled. Hence the term that you sometimes hear, face diapers. And if you want to mandate the children, then it better be something that you are willing to do yourself. Are you willing to wear a mask 6 to 7 hours per day along with them? If not, then it is hypocritical for you to expect them to do it. Even those surgeons who wear masks, and not all of them do, and even the ones who do, they don't wear it the entire time. But those who do wear them have their masks changed frequently because of the bacteria. An equally important point is the fact that we are meant to expel carbon dioxide, not to constantly inhale it. Again, if you are all for inhaling carbon dioxide because you think it's beneficial to you, then go for it. Try sleeping with a mask on for 7 hours if you don't like the idea of experimenting with it during the day, and see how well you sleep. I imagine someone could actually suffocate themselves trying it that way. Here's the bottom line. These mandates are not about health because anyone who's taken the time to look at the scientific research knows that masks are completely useless in preventing the spread of these viruses. Both sides cannot be right. Like I said, I'm only interested in the truth. So if the other side has the facts to prove that masks are safe and effective, then please produce them. I have been asking this question for over a year, and not one person has produced the facts to prove that masks are safe and effective. Otherwise, it's just your opinion, and this isn't about what kind of drink or
Thank
food
you,
you
Ms.
prefer.
Moorfield. We appreciate it.
Jennifer Bain.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I am a resident of District 5, and a patient-facing healthcare provider at one of the large hospitals in St. Louis County. Let me assure you that our hospitals are full. Census is high at all of the St. Louis County hospitals, and my hospital has as many hospitalized COVID patients as we did at this time last year, leading into the school year and cold and flu season. I have two concerns I would like to bring before the council tonight regarding Resolution 2109. And bear with me because I've changed my comments after hearing Mr. Ullman's earlier presentation about this. The first comment that I have is something that I'm sure you've all heard before. COVID is putting tremendous strain on our healthcare system and our healthcare providers. This is not just about physical beds, but about having staff available to care for sick patients. When hospitals are full of COVID patients, beds and staff are unavailable for other emergencies and serious needs. Car accidents, strokes, even broken bones on the playground. Lost time in receiving care with some of these events is directly related to poor outcomes for the patient. Our hospitals are a community resource, and it is in our best interest to do what we can to make sure providers can care for all community members, especially those with the most emergent needs. I ask you to strongly consider how changes to mitigation strategies have the potential to affect our healthcare system over the next several months. Secondly, it is my concern that 2109 is a knee-jerk reaction to one disease at one moment in time. COVID-19 is not the first global pandemic, and global commerce and travel is such that it is unlikely to be the last. I am encouraged in tonight's presentation by Executive Ellman that public health professionals are being brought to the table with educational experts. It is my hope that any resolution adopted would not negatively affect the county health department's ability to respond to future health crises. Please consider the impact to future public health needs as well as those of today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Corey Shires.
Corey Shires.
Different topic.
So my comments on this would be that I'm opposed to the government solving parent problems. When somebody needs to be quarantined, the parents should be doing it. This isn't the first time anybody's been sick, so I don't know why the solution would be the county, the state, the federal. It all seems absurd. When I think of the government doing something to solve a problem, I think of Japanese internment camps, FISA courts. I think of what they do that's intended to help us, ends up destroying us internally. To the comments I've heard over here about kids, have you noticed the studies that are showing that kids' IQs have dropped 20 points under COVID? That's a fact. Show me where masks work. I see Linus in a security blanket. You're just wrapping yourself up in lies. Proof is what we need. Proof. I'm a public person talking to public. I can speak to who I like. You all should do the studies on this stuff because they're out there. We are being lied to. And another thing I just heard was that under COVID, that the government, that right now the hospitals are being overrun and you don't have beds for them. Well, it was 15 days to slow the spread so they could prep for that. 30 days to slow the spread so they could prep for that. 45 days to slow the spread so they could prep for that. Not perpetuity of lockdowns. So there is no way, absolutely, in the world that I could support any kind of overreach of the government taking control of what a parent should do. The last thing I'll say about is asymptomatic spread doesn't exist. That's what kids get. So why are we locking them down in the first place? Thanks.
Justin McCoy.
Hi, my name is Justin McCoy, and I'm a voting resident of District 7 in St. Charles County. I'm a parent of 2 young elementary-aged children in the Francis House School District. I'm here tonight to speak out not only in opposition to the dangerous resolution proposed by Councilman Brazel and Councilman Cronin, but about what it means to be a good leader and a good role model in our community. As parents, we strive to be a good role model for our children. We also encourage them to be a good leader when interacting with others, so ultimately they can become decent contributing members of society when they're all grown up. The definition of a leader is a person who rules or guides or inspires others, and a role model is a person who is looked to by others as an example to be imitated. Lately, our county has become downright hateful, misinformed, and ignorant relating to mask wearing, COVID vaccinations, quarantines, and the definition of their rights. This is setting a horrible example for our children, and what's worse, our supposed leaders are being anything but a leader. Instead, they are formulating knee-jerk responses to these things they don't comprehend or agree with, such as Resolution 2109 being presented before you today. I don't pretend to know everything about everything. In fact, I challenge you to find somebody who actually knows everything. I constantly encourage my children to look for those who are more educated than them in their fields of expertise. Listen to all sides of the story. Think before they act. Find compromise, and consider the well-being of others, not just their own. To get to my point, what is the purpose of a public health department if they don't have any control over the public's health? When it comes to the ability to quarantine an individual for a highly contagious communicable disease, they must be able to make a decision which is best for the overall public health and well-being within the county. If the public health department loses that ability to look out for public health, why even have it? On the flip side, what's the point of a school if they focus most of their energy on everything but teaching and educating? A school's job should be to teach, not play doctor or public health department. It simply amazes me that the number of individuals who are completely misinformed and uneducated on everything surrounding COVID. Yes, we're all tired of having to wear masks. Yes, nobody enjoys having to take weeks off of work in a given school year to stay with their quarantined child. But you know what? This isn't about me or my selfish desires. This is about those we love and we care about who cannot make it through COVID. This is about being a good leader and a good role model for what is best for all, not just the select few. In closing, I encourage all of the county council representatives to remember that you are leaders and role models for our community. Don't let the noise from ignorance and misinformation drown out what is right, fair, just, and best for the public health of St. Charles County. Thank you.
Megan Rogers.
Hang on. Who are we?
Megan Rogers.
Hi. My name is Megan Rogers. I'm here for what was proposed by Mr. Ellman. It has made me as a parent nervous and scared. He essentially wants to take away health decisions from the health department and put it with the school boards and wants kids to stay in school, healthy or not. It's a dangerous decision. 16% of kids with COVID-19 are asymptomatic. With Delta, half of them are asymptomatic. So you're sending healthy kids to school that are positive. And those positive cases of healthy kids are then taking it to other kids that are taking it home to families like mine who are immune compromised, who have a preemie child with asthma, who have an autoimmune child that may not survive COVID. In another mom group, a mother was asking for advice. She went in to wake up her daughter, and her daughter was unresponsive. She couldn't wake her up. She wasn't breathing. She called 911, did CPR. They took her to the hospital. They revived her. They got her breathing. They did a COVID test. She was positive. She will not wake up. It has been 2 weeks. She's breathing on her own, but she won't wake up. This mom posted begging anyone if their child has had COVID and went to sleep and never woke up, if their child woke up. She hasn't heard anything. She's still waiting for her child to wake up. This child did not have any symptoms. This child went to sleep and did not wake up. They're still waiting for her to wake up. It can happen. I know what it's like to see your child struggle to breathe. My daughter has asthma. At 2 years old, I watched paramedics be scared because they couldn't open her airways. I watched her be loaded on a gurney and put in an ambulance and her not cry because she couldn't breathe. I had to watch that. And I know with COVID, that can happen again to her. I don't want this to happen to my child. I don't want it to happen to another child. But it can happen if you take away the decision to quarantine. We could do a modified quarantine if you implement masks. Because if both people wear masks, it's a modified quarantine.
Thank you for speaking.
Thank you.
Mary Ann Boatright.
Claire, do we have any others? I thought we had speakers on other topics.
We had 12 on the COVID
I thought they
issues.
were on other topics.
We have others after that.
Okay. Sorry, Mary Ann, go ahead.
Okay, my name's Mary Ann Boatright, and I have a story of a family I'd like to share. A patient presented to ER vomiting blood from gastrointestinal bleed with migraine. Hospital insisted on COVID test before doctor would see patient or perform scope to find bleed. Family reiterated patient had no COVID symptoms, just bleeding. Family agreed if they'd complete the test, keeping away from eye and brain. Any viral load should be present in the lower part of the nose. Hospital only follows policy of going near eye and brain, so we have bleeding migraine patient, and this hospital's priority is obviously misplaced. Family asked if tests came back positive, would they give vitamin C, D, zinc, hydroxychloroquine, or ivermectin? Hospital said they give nothing unless patient goes into respiratory distress. Then they give remdesivir. Remdesivir damages kidneys and organs and it has higher death rate. Remdesivir performed so poorly in trials, they removed death as a data point. Hospital said there was no cure for COVID and ivermectin was for animals. See the 2019 CDC and WHO instructions on how to give ivermectin to Middle Eastern refugees coming to the U.S. So we give ivermectin to refugees, but not U.S. citizens. Apparently, hospital never heard of Dr. Vladimir Zelenko who saved thousands of COVID patients with C, D, zinc, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, Z-Pak. Dr. Zelenko has cancer with one lung and remains healthy after thousands of COVID exposures. Maybe it's not as contagious and dangerous as they would like to scare us into believing. Hospital said PCR test was positive and there would be no GI doctor or scope to find bleed until after quarantine. The family asked if they were going to let the patient bleed to death. Hospital suggested several inpatient days watching blood loss, and if it became critically dangerous, they would do an emergency scope. Family asked how many rounds PCR was run. Lab stated they keep running it and running it and running it until they find something. Nobel Prize winner Carrie Mullis, who invented PCR, said it was never to be used to identify COVID, and you never run more than 28 rounds because you can find anything on anybody explaining the false positives. Family removed patient from hospital and scheduled a GI doctor visit. Doctor's office stated hospital told them patient was COVID positive, so he wouldn't see the patient until after quarantine. Family asked doctor to order blood work to check on the blood loss. He said he couldn't do it because he hadn't seen the patient. Patient took another PCR test the next day and it was negative. Family ordered and paid for the blood work. Patient was too dehydrated to give blood. Family treated the patient on their own, doing their own research and getting pharmacist guidance. Hospital doctor in St. Charles County Health Department put patient at risk of great physical harm and death. Patient prevented from getting life-saving care and is still dangerously ill. COVID is about money, power, control, and where medical tyrannies are decide who lives, dies, and is quarantined unless all of us in this room fight back. This is one of the many horror stories playing out across our nation. Numerous patients are being denied care and dying unnecessarily in hospitals. It's up to good people to tell the truth, shine light on evil, and demand it stop. Hospitals, doctors, nurses, and St. Charles County Health Department who knowingly and willingly harm patients, prevented medical care resulting in damaged health or death needs to be investigated.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Have we exceeded our limit on public speaking?
We've exceeded our limit on this topic, but I gave her that one, so do you have one that's on the other side of this topic?
We did
Oh, we started the other side first?
we did pro, con for the first 6.
So we did
and
pro
then-
first?
Yes.
Gotcha. All right. So we've exceeded our limits on this topic. So do you have another?
There's Eric Naputi on constitutional rights.
Hello, my name is Dr. Eric Naputi. I'm a physician here in St. Louis. I own a dozen family integrated centers. Yes, I am a doctor of chiropractic. I'm also a doctor of natural medicine. I have a master's in clinical nutrition, 3 bachelor's degrees. I own 2 clinical laboratories, and we do PCR testing. I've testified in front of over 6 governors. I've testified in over 7 different states, counties, and organizations like this. I'm a bit of a subject expert on some of this stuff, but I'd like to talk about the Constitution. In remembrance of the Constitution Week that you guys have all set here in St. Charles County Council, I think it's interesting to bring to light the fact that the National Archives and Institute of Records of the federal government in September of this year has associated and introduced a harmful language alert to accompany the historical documents, including the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and our Constitution. Maybe this is offensive and outdated to some people, they said. Is this offensive to you? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that we secure these rights. Governments are instituted among men. Now I'm going to go to the part that seems to be very offensive to people. Here's what's offensive: that whatsoever form of government becomes destructive and ends. Sorry, I can't read this. Whatso form of governments become destructive, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new governments and new foundations. What I want to ask all of you tonight is this. After listening to everyone speak about the quarantine issues and the concerns that they've got as parents, I know A.G. Smith was speaking the other day. We spoke to him about this topic. By the way, I think it's interesting to find out that our Attorney General is suing for the unconstitutional filing of mask mandates. I have a few questions for people in here. Number one, is anyone in here racist? Is anyone here sexist? Does anyone like to be discriminated based off of their religious beliefs or the religious beliefs of others? We always say that we don't want our government to be involved in regulating businesses and schools, but there are certain things that we agree that we need to be regulated. I certainly do not want discrimination of any kind, whether you're vaccinated, unvaccinated, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, want to quarantine or not quarantine, or your religious beliefs and freedoms to be the reason for your persecution. And if anyone has problems with that, this is the United States of America, and you need to leave right now. There is no point in debating the facts anymore. Common sense has left the room over 2 years ago. So let's give the power back to the people to decide. God bless all of you for the roles that you're in. You did not sign up for this. I know that you didn't. We didn't either. We want the people to have the rights. Teachers, I'm sorry. I love you. You're misinformed. You have no idea what's really going on. There's over 17 to 20 million healthcare workers who are being forced out of their jobs right now because they don't want to get the jab. If you don't want to go to work because of this, leave. You don't have to teach anymore. Yes, you have a risk. Yes, you have a risk. You can wear a mask, get a vaccine.
Dr. Naputi.
Thank you all very much.
The final speaker on that subject.
Okay, that's the final speaker on that subject. Okay.
Regarding Gateway Street, Wesley Tippett.
Regarding Gateway Street? Did he leave?
I believe
No,
he's
he's outside, I think. He's on his way.
Yes, ma'am.
This is some they sent.
We can hand them out after a while, Claire.
Go ahead.
We can hand them out afterwards. Go ahead and, hold on just a second. Are you ready? Fire away.
Well, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, I want to thank you all for having this open forum. And I know my issue is something that's under the radar screen. And what I'm trying to achieve is to grandfather my street in, Gateway Street, which is off of St. Peter's Howe Road. I was hoping you all could read what I have to say before my time started, sir. And because then because what I have to say has been, what my problem is, it's been going on for over 30 years. What happened was Gateway Street was denied county takeover in 1989 and was told that an 1.5-inch layer of asphalt needed to be put on top of the existing asphalt. That happened 20-something years ago. I don't know the exact date. And then we were denied again, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, just a couple of months ago. The same day we were denied, I happened to be driving down St. Peter's Howe Road, and I come upon Park Charles Boulevard South. And I seen, hey, there's some new curb being put in. So I get out my tape measure, and I measure 2.5 and 3 inches of asphalt. And that same day, I was denied by the department head, Mr. Tukowski, Craig, saying that we were deficient in asphalt. We needed 7.5 inches of asphalt, and our street was labeled a minor street. I know I only have a few minutes, sir. Is there any way each one of you all can look over?
We have it.
Okay, you all have it. Do you all have any questions you want to ask me about what's going on? Are you allowed to do that right now?
No.
Okay. Could I?
Yes,
Could we
put that down there. Ashley, he's got a picture for you. There you go. Can you pull that down just a little bit?
Yes, sir.
There you go.
Okay, thickness of asphalt on Park Charles Boulevard South at Atwater Street, which is about a quarter of a mile up from St. Peter's Howe Road. Thickness of asphalt at Park Charles Boulevard South at St. Peter's Howe Road. So I took two different measurements 2 weeks apart, plus, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, I had a supervisor saying, hey, what the heck are you doing out here? I explained to him what I'm doing. I said, hey, there's been something not fair going on. It's not right. We're being held to a higher standard than Park Charles Boulevard South. And he said, oh, there's 2 and 3 inches all up and down this roadway. A supervisor that was putting in the curb. So I know you have bigger fish to fry. I'm low on the totem pole. Could you all please look at my paperwork, look at my pictures? Your Honor, I appreciate everything y'all do. I know you guys got a hard job. I appreciate your parks department, the creation of these great parks. You guys need to be commended on your work. Thank you very much for looking this over. And could you please get back to me?
We will.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ronald Schuler.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Yes, sir.
My name's Ron Schuler. We're recent residents of Gateway Street. We moved there almost a year ago, but we didn't find out that it was deemed a private street until after we moved in. And from what I understand, there are 2 other families on that same street that the same thing happened to. Had I known this was a private street before I moved there, there's a good likelihood that I wouldn't have moved there because I came from a private street before and I know what it takes to keep it up, to keep the snow cleared off in the wintertime and try and keep the upkeep of the road. Had I known this was a private street and I was going to have to do that all over again, I probably would not have moved there. So it would just be, and like he said, that it'd be nice if the county could take this road over for us, not so much just for the plowing, I mean, that would be nice too, because we have an elderly lady up there at the end. She's 90 years old. If something would happen to her and there's snow on that road, I don't know that the ambulances and that would be able to get up to her. But Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Arnie Dinoff.
Is Mr. Dinoff outside?
He must have left.
She's right there. This is our last speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dinoff, County Public Advocate. The first issue, as I've spoken all of the previous meetings, is this is now the third or fourth meeting. I've talked to Joanne Lakem, our $195,000 county administrator that we pay a salary to. And for some reason, we can't get through to you that you have to follow the state law. You're not exempt from following measures of Chapter 610.010, as you know that there are anticipated large crowds that are coming into your council chambers. This is not only a democracy, but it's also a republic. And every one of our citizens deserves to have access to government and access to testify before our elected officials and bring grievances and issues before you who get paid over $19,000 plus health benefits and a pension. So let me say very loud and clear that now the Attorney General is going to have to get involved because you don't want to move to a venue that can accommodate people, to not make people stand in a non-air conditioned room and put the public safety at jeopardy here. Not only now is the St. Charles City Fire Department involved because of the fire codes being violated, but now the state fire marshal needs to get involved. So I ask that you move these meetings to better accommodation. Now on the contract tracing issue, my questions are, what is happening with the $68 million in COVID funds that the county received from our federal government? Schools are not equipped to do medical-related issues. If you are so against the health department doing their tasks, why don't you just abolish the public health department? Why are we spending millions upon millions of dollars when you don't want them to do their duties allowed by state and county ordinances? Just abolish them, because we're wasting our money. So on the consent agenda is for the Emergency Communications Department, $560,000 for tower structure analysis and a shelter. Why are we giving that money to a foreign company called Nokia? Why aren't we paying consultants and people right here in St. Charles County and keeping our taxpayer dollars here in St. Charles County? That goes the same with the roof replacement on the corrections facility for $223,000. Why are we going with Lakeside Roofing in a different state? Collinsville, Illinois. Didn't you look up in the yellow pages? We have umpteen roofing companies right here that employ our neighbors, our friends, and our family members. When are you going to learn to keep our taxpayer dollars right here in St. Charles County? It makes no sense that you want to go and spend $223,000 in Collinsville, Illinois,
Thank you,
supporting
Mr.
their
Dinoff, for
economy.
speaking.
Do the right thing,
That wraps
council.
up our public comment for this evening. So move on to oral report from the county executive. So no report. Moves on to the consent agenda. Any items to be removed from the consent agenda?
The roof's not on, right, Mike? That's not on. That's still tabled, right?
The emergency communications is there. You want to remove that?
No, I'd like to keep that tabled along with the tower and the roof. After discussion with John Greifswald and county staff, we got a few more questions to answer, and that is an agreement with the county staff to keep it on the table.
So we're removing facilities management?
No, we're leaving that on the table.
It's
So basically all of them.
okay, so we're back to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept the consent agenda.
Motion made. Do I have a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? So the consent agenda is approved. Those items to be removed from the consent agenda will stay removed from the consent agenda, as Mr. Cronin was talking about. That brings us up to resolutions, starting with resolution number 2108. Do you want to let them know that we're doing? Hi.
Resolution number 2108, sponsored by council as a whole. A resolution recognizing September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week in St. Charles County, Missouri. Whereas the St. Charles chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution has been in existence since 1909 and currently consists of 95 members. And whereas this chapter has a Constitution Week committee with goals to preserve the past, enhance the present, and invest in the future. And whereas the Daughters of the American Revolution wish to educate all citizens, especially the youth and newly naturalized citizens, about our founding documents and encourage all in the community to protect and defend the Constitution. And whereas the Daughters of the American Revolution started a tradition of celebrating Constitution Week many years ago, and whereas in 1955, the Daughters of the American Revolution conveyed a petition to Congress to dedicate September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week, and whereas the U.S. Congress adopted such a resolution and President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed Public Law 915 on August 2nd, 1956, to establish such an observation, and whereas during this time we remember that the Constitution is a living document that guarantees the freedoms Americans enjoy. Now therefore be it resolved by the County Council of St. Charles County, Missouri as follows. Section 1. The St. Charles County Council hereby proclaims the week of September 17th through 23rd, 2021 as Constitution Week in St. Charles County, Missouri. Section 2. The St. Charles County Council hereby further asks citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties.
Thank you very much for being here. Do you want to introduce all four ladies who are here and say anything about Constitution Week?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Elam. My name is Joan Kagi, and we have Sarah Stratton, Gail Ray, who's our chapter regent, and Suzanne Weaver, and we thank you very much. And I have to say, unfortunately, those are old statistics. Our chapter now is about 185 people.
There you go.
Not 95 people. But we do really appreciate recognizing the Constitution, I think, in light of the discussion tonight. The importance of the Constitution is understood from a lot of different vantage points. So we thank you for taking the time and recognizing it.
Well, we appreciate you all doing this every year, and I think it's nice when having a history teacher here with us. I think it's nice that we can be in this room and we can have a public disagreement in a forum like this because we have a Constitution that allows us the freedom to be able to do this. Mr. Hollander.
Yes, I just, again, like I say this every year, but I really appreciate the bringing this up and having this week. I taught for 34 years. I was trying to figure out the number of times I taught the Constitution, well over 200. And it was probably one of the more rewarding periods of time for our students, at whatever age, to learn just exactly what this country stands for. And I appreciate the efforts that you people make to continue it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. White.
I would also like to thank you for being here and all the things that you do for our Constitution. And I especially appreciate that you've done the research to find that you had an ancestor that participated in a Revolutionary War. And I'm sure there's many of the young women that are here in the audience, if you look back at your ancestry, you too would have some ancestors that participated in our freedom. And I know that this chapter would love to welcome you into their chapter.
And men too, Mr. White, correct?
Yes,
For the sons.
I am.
Yes.
So I would invite you to come up and take a quick picture.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So with that, I would ask you to read the resolution, call the roll.
Resolution 21-08, sponsored by council as a whole. A resolution recognizing September 17th through 23rd as Constitution Week in St. Charles County, Missouri. Councilman Brazel.
Yes.
Councilman Hammond.
Yes.
Councilman Elam.
Yes.
Councilman Hollander.
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider.
Yes.
Councilman White.
Yes.
Councilman Cronin.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and the resolution is passed. We appreciate all you do, and stop by the History Museum. You will learn a whole lot about the history of St. Charles as well. So she'll recruit you for DAR and for that. There's all kinds of stuff. So with that, we will move on to Resolution 2109.
Resolution 2109, sponsored by Joe Cronin and Joe Brazel. A resolution of the St. Charles County Council requesting that the county executive and county health department take certain actions relating to the quarantine orders for all St. Charles County schools. Whereas the St. Charles County Council believes that the state regulations relating to isolation and quarantine of close contacts for COVID-19 exposures in schools contained within 19 CSR 20-20.040 and 19 CSR 20-20.050 are hurting children's education, are a financial hardship on county families, and may appear to be contradictory to the Missouri Constitution, Article 3, Section 4, Line 24, that states, "The General Assembly shall not pass any local or special laws regulating the management of public schools." And whereas the St. Charles County Council believes that individual school boards and administrators are better situated than the county health department to make decisions relating to quarantine orders and the health of school-aged children, their families, and the wider community within their schools. And whereas this resolution reaffirms the intent of the County Council's Resolution 21-02, which states, "The St. Charles County Council hereby affirms that it has no authority to regulate school districts, that authority being reserved to each school district's elected school board in the state of Missouri." Now therefore be it resolved by the County Council of St. Charles, St. Charles County, Missouri as follows. Section 1. The St. Charles County Council hereby requests that the county executive and St. Charles County Health Department suspend quarantine orders for all St. Charles County schools for close contact COVID-19 exposures, and direct any future COVID-19 quarantine decisions for St. Charles County schools to the individual school boards and administrators. That the county health department requests the State Department of Health and Senior Services supply adequate COVID-19 testing supplies to all St. Charles County schools, and that the St. Charles County schools and the St. Charles County Health Department compile and publicly report the results of the COVID-19 tests from the schools.
Mr. Brazel.
Yes, so what I'd like to do is I'm going to explain why we're here at this point. And then, after we maybe have some exchange of conversation, I am going to offer an addendum to the resolution. In May of 2021, the council passed a resolution stating that the county government will not have anything to do with contact tracing, mask mandates, or quarantines. As we've been told over and over again, that the state statute regulates the school boards and the superintendents regulate the schools, not the county council. So after we did that resolution in May, I received a 12-page recommendation sent out to the schools, which the county council never saw. I didn't even know they were doing that. And when you send out recommendations by the health department, the schools are going to abide by it because they don't know what else to do. They're scared. They don't know what to do. They're going to follow the health department rules. And some of these rules were so draconian that it said anybody over 2 years of age must wear a mask, even if they're fully vaccinated. I mean, it had crazy, non-science-based recommendations. So when I reached out to the county executive office, I said, this is not what we agreed to. This is not what we were supposed to do. We were supposed to back off the COVID numbers, which, you know, I'm going to talk about this resolution, but there is a lot of science out there. COVID numbers are way down. It was in the New York Post today. But I'm going to talk about the resolution. We could talk about the science later. But so I had asked the question multiple times as a county councilman, a senior county councilman. This is the questions I asked started in May. this school year, how many kids have been quarantined, how many kids have been quarantined that have had a positive test, how many of the ones that had positive tests had any symptoms, were they asymptomatic, or what was the case, how many were negative tests and were still quarantined, how many days later, after they received the letter, when they had close contact, how many days later did they receive a letter? You know, in some cases, it's 5 to 7 days. After they have this close contact, the health department sends them a letter. 7 days later, we got hundreds of letters stating that my kid had to be quarantined after close contact 7 days ago. Now, if that makes sense to any of you folks, this is why we're doing this resolution. Our health department is out of control. It is not using any science. It's not science-based. If you want to have a conversation, what you said, some of your ideas might be okay, but we're not in this to, this doesn't make sense. No, you talk, I didn't talk. Please don't talk. We are not going to do these things that make no science, that take away our constitutional rights, and they're abusive to our kids, okay? The intent was clear. As a matter of fact, never did I get any of my questions. I asked 4 times and never got them answered, not one time, until somebody filed some Freedom of Information Acts, and I think Lindy just got it today, which is ridiculous, all right? So the intent was clear with what the county council was. So the numbers are way down. It's a 99.009 chance of dying from COVID. And St. Charles County, we had you could sit there and scratch your head, whatever, but in St. Charles County, no one under the age of 10 died from COVID, all right? The reinfection of COVID cases is very, very, very rare. If you have COVID, the chance of getting COVID is very, very rare. And that's even out of the CDC. And if you read this thing from the New York Post that came out today, it explains all that. It says that the COVID cases are way down and that they're not even counting the people who have had COVID. All they want to do is jab people with a vaccination. So you got to ask yourself this. Let me ask you guys this. How would it look if the county health department said all white people have to do contact tracing and quarantines? Or what? All black people have to do contact tracing and quarantines. How is it any different that they're saying just children when they have the less chance of being affected by COVID? It makes no sense. It is totally discrimination against children. Why is that? Because they're an easy target. It just doesn't make any sense. So you're going to either treat everybody the same or don't treat them equal. So if you go to the football games, and so many of us are going around not wearing masks. Now, I'll pray for you mask wearers because you're just misinformed. Okay, you really are. Because the COVID thing is over. We're done with it, okay? So I will pray for you. I swear I will.
I appreciate it.
But
We will pray for you. You're a treasure.
okay, so it's mentally abusive, it's physically abusive. Why are we following these draconian laws by our state? When really we would argue that we're not following the law. We would argue that we're not following, it's unconstitutional. When you violate the Constitution, you can't write a law to violate the Constitution. The Constitution supersedes all of their laws. So all this nonsense is unconstitutional. How ironic, it's Constitution Week. And the DMT, the Department of these health departments, they don't need our permission. We don't need to ask their permission to lower the quarantine and the contact tracing. We just do it. You got Perry County, you got these other counties that are just doing no action. A lot of these rural counties aren't doing anything. Why is that? Because they know in their knower what's right. They know in their knowers what's best for the community, and they represent their citizens. That's why they're doing it. Because they know that this COVID stuff isn't right. It's abusive and it's unconstitutional. Back in the day, last year, there was a lot of stuff we didn't know. There were things we were doing that we thought we had to do, okay? Then more and more information came out, more and more facts came out, and you start realizing that we should change what we're doing. We're there now. The COVID stuff is over, okay? And it's over, all right? And then one more thing, I know there's other council members who want to talk, but The question I also had for Roy, and I'm not going to say you have to answer this tonight, but you were supposed to work on this, is there is an opinion that House Bill 291, 271, when the House, Bob Honor senators and their legislators passed a bill back in June that said that if any regulations or mandates done by any form of government towards schools or any, it has to be voted on by the body, the board. Well, by doing quarantines and doing these heavy quarantines on people, which was stated there was 29,000 kids quarantined, and the one gentleman that came up, you said, it's a teacher's job to teach. How are you going to teach them when they're quarantined, when they got all those quarantines, when it's only 1% of the people or the children have a positive test? And then when they get a positive, if they get tested and it's negative, they're still quarantined. Does that make any sense to anybody? So if there's a way to figure this out, just stop it all. It doesn't make any sense. So one more thing, and I'm sorry. All right. I do want to amend the resolution, but I'll wait if some of you folks want to talk. Mr. Curley.
Okay, so I want to start real simply how this came about, so you folks know, because I've been accused by a lot of folks of playing politics. But to me, it's not about politics, it's about kids. And I also have children in this school, grandchildren actually, in the Wentzville School District. So it's important to me as well. And Mr. Vasil and I have a lot of different opinions about things, but I think if you're a good legislature, you work together. I mean, I don't think this is about vaccine or anti-vaccine. I don't think it's about mask or any mask. It's about quarantines that are affecting our kids, okay? It's not, and I've got a lot of complaints because I represent a good portion of Wentzville about these school quarantines, sometimes not making a lot of sense, no way of appealing them, a lot of issues with people. And if you read the quarantine orders really closely on the county's website, okay, you'll see that not only can't you send them to school, you're supposed to keep them, confined in a bedroom and just feed them the meals. And I have a 5-year-old grandson at Wabash Elementary, and you're not going to keep that kid in a room for all day. He'd bounce off through the walls. So the thing of it is in September 1st, I had sent an email out to the council and the county executive administration with some concerns about what I saw were some problems in the Wentzville School District, okay? But I've heard the same complaints from last year from Fort Zumwalt school districts. And the school districts admittedly don't know how to handle this 100%, okay? And the administrators are looking for answers as well. Well, I want to go back a little further and tell you the thing that really got me, and this is part of the resolutions nobody's talked about. The state got $185 million in federal aid for a school testing program. There's only 15 schools in the state that are using a school testing program. I talked to a lot of parents of quarantined kids who said their kids weren't tested, okay? That makes no sense to me. I've also had a mother that's been sick in this county for a while, so I've been in the hospital quite a bit and a senior citizen centers. And you don't get into one of them without a temperature check, but the schools aren't doing that. So if you read this resolution closely, you'll see that that is something we're asking the state for. Where are those test kits and why aren't we doing it? I do think it's wrong that a citizen has to go and do a Freedom of Information Act request through the Sunshine Law to get numbers about quarantines for various schools and schools districts in this area. That's got to change too. But I want to draw everybody back in this room a little bit until basically September 1st and 2nd, I was shouting out to county executive, Steve, we need to look at this. We need to look at Jefferson County, they modified it, okay? Their quarantine rules better, maybe not good enough for a lot of folks in this room, but better. So did Joplin, okay, so did Perryville. There's quite a few places that do it. Interesting enough, Jefferson County, who's got probably one of the better modified quarantines in the St. Louis area, they have a 5-person health board that's elected. They don't have one person doing it. I do have a problem also with the way we're doing it is I believe in transparent representative government. And we have 7 members of this council for a reason, because we debate things pretty hard, try to make the best rules. Right now you have one health professional that answers to one attorney, and I don't think that's a good way of doing it. So a resolution, just so you're aware, has no legal binding, okay? We're just asking Mr. Ellman to consider this, and we're requesting it, okay, on this resolution. It's just equivalent to me saying, hey, Steve, you didn't listen to me first time, I'm yelling a little louder. I worked with the county councilor on Friday afternoon to get this done because I wanted to get something on the agenda because I think this is an important topic, okay? But what really interesting happened, you know, I believe God works in mysterious ways, but on Saturday, even though Stephen knew this resolution was out there, and it does have, it does restrict his powers and the powers of his public health director, we both attended the wake for Lance Corporal Jared Smits. And at that wake, I saw the country come together. I saw a lot of people in this county that were divided got together, okay? And I think we can do that. I think this county's good enough to do this, okay? But what I'm seeing in this room is not the case. We've got angry parents, we've got educators who don't know what to do, we've got healthcare professionals say we've got a problem, okay? And we don't have a really good method of addressing it. This morning, I found out that Steve had sent a letter to the new health director, okay, and asking about quarantine changes, and I was really encouraged that Steve did this, okay? And I'm also real encouraged about the reply from the new state health director, because he's encouraging, basically, he's encouraging a statewide call with the public health officials and the schools. He's trying to get both together to talk about these quarantine measures and what works, okay, and what doesn't work, and maybe ways to make it better, okay? On that same note, this council has advisory boards for our parks departments, for our building regulations, for planning and zoning. We have a lot of people that work really hard to give us really good advice, okay? So prior to this meeting, myself and county executive talked about this issue because, you know, we weren't all elected to do this. This got thrown on to us, and COVID's here, and COVID's probably going to be here a while. And there might be God forbid, but there might be a COVID 23 or 24 down the road. And unfortunately, I know a lot of people think it doesn't exist, but I also last week had to go to a funeral of a close family friend who was younger than me and didn't get vaccinated, and he died. And you know, and that was very tragic as well. So what myself and Mr. Ullman were talking about is something I think that it has merit, okay? I personally would like to table this bill. I would like to see the response from the state health director about what guidance he has coming up. And I should say bill, it's not a bill, it's a resolution. I want to see what the state health director, his conversations with the schools and the public health agencies, I want to see what they have to say. Maybe he's got a good idea. Maybe somewhere to share information and work together on this, like we should as Americans. So next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to have a county health advisory board that would give recommendations to the leadership of the county and us. Those recommendations, just so you know, just like when we have planning and zoning, you heard about that tonight, those are recommendations to the council for approval. Typically, those boards are, they're nominated by the executive, they're approved by the council. I would suggest that we have a couple of, one person each from the two hospital chains, BJC and SSM, okay? I think we need to have our public health director there, okay, as well on that board. And then I think we also need to have 3 superintendents from the largest school districts in this county, and maybe an attorney and a retired judge that Nancy can probably find to mediate. Please let me finish. I listen to you folks, okay? If we had something like that and we had it balanced, maybe they could come up with some reasonable solutions to this council. Okay, bear in mind that those are suggestions. Quite often, the council and the executive will override those suggestions, but we've got to get better information and better recommendations than what we're getting right now. It's just, we have a problem. The other thing is everybody at this podium took an oath to uphold the Constitution. In that resolution that I worked with the county councilor on, whacked out Friday afternoon, there's a serious constitutional question, and there's also a question about House Bill 271 that Senator Honors here. So I would like to get those whether even if it matters getting an opinion from Attorney General Smith, I'd like to get those questions as well. So that's my solution to it. I mean, everybody's going to be a little angry with me about this, you know, but that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to do the right thing. And I think the right thing is to get more input, listen to what the health director comes up with, and then Steve had told me as well, if we want to bring this resolution back up, we could do a special meeting and bring it right back up, okay? But I think
doing something without getting input from the health director, the new state health director, and without at least examining, getting more information from the hospitals and the school superintendents, I think that's not a smart move.
All right.
Sure,
So,
of course.
as long as we're recognizing elected officials, Representative Richard West is here as well from New Mally. So, Mr. White.
I was just going to second his motion to table the bill.
Well, yes, but Bob couldn't get in the door, and there was too much people out there, and he came to talk about 271, so if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to invite him up to, I got some questions about that. That was his bill, House Bill 271.
Okay, but Mr. Cronin put a motion on the floor of tabling this bill.
I think as a courtesy to Senator Onder, I'd like to hear his opinion on 271 and the constitutionality of this. Okay?
Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the council, Bob Onder. Councilman Cronin, I'm here for much the same reason you are. You're here because of family and constituents. I am here because of constituents and especially my patients. I have two medical offices, one in St. Louis County and one in St. Charles County. And I have to say that my complaints about contact quarantines from parents in St. Charles County are far, far, far more frequent than those in St. Louis County, which really says something considering what the last year has been like in the county across the river. As you know, I sent a letter to the council last week, mostly giving my legal perspective about this issue of contact quarantines as it relates to COVID-19. And of course, as I believe you all know, I believe for at least the past year, tracing of contacts of COVID cases, so-called, is no longer practical or rational. But I think that as a number of speakers have said today, I think the county's current policy is all pain for no gain. We know, again, that no child younger than 10 years old has died in the state of Missouri from COVID-19. Not a single person in St. Charles County under the age of 30 has died of COVID-19. The CDC's current estimate of mortality for COVID-19 in those under 18 years of age is 0. And I would add that influenza and pneumonias and chronic respiratory disease all kill more children than does COVID-19. But the harm to our children's education has been enormous. I just received, Councilman Brazel, you mentioned requesting various data from the county health department for, I guess, weeks now. I finally, I only started about a week and a half ago, so I'm doing good. But it was just handed to me at the beginning of the meeting tonight. And actually, the data were worse than I thought. According to that data provided by the health department, there have been 34,795 full quarantines of children, of students, because of contacts, not because of illness, but because of contacts in St. Charles County. I mean, think about it, multiply that by 10, 340,000, a third of a million days of missed school because of contact. And how many of those kids test positive? I also got that data that night. If you divide 407 positive tests by 34,000 and some change cases, quarantines, that's 1.2%, which is almost identical to the data that Jefferson County provided last week, 1.3%. And we know that the cost is enormous. I mean, needless to say, what does this do to our kids' education? In addition, we know that absenteeism correlates with poor grades, with dropouts, with teen pregnancies, suicidal ideation, drug abuse, and ending up in the penitentiary. And vaccines are readily available for teachers and staff. I would also add Councilman Brazel, you said something about, I think, I don't know your exact words, but we're picking on our kids. 3/4 of the total quarantines, contact quarantines in our whole county have been in kids who have a uniquely low risk of COVID. As far as the legal aspects of this, of course, last meeting we heard that, quote, the county's hands were tied, that we have to do these draconian quarantines because of references to 3 or 4 Department of Health and Senior Services regulations. In the letter I sent to y'all, I analyzed that. I think you will notice some important qualifiers in those regulations. Probably, as required, appropriate, may include based on the disease and the patient's circumstances and other available information. Those are important qualifiers. They do not say simply must quarantine no matter what. I also pointed out that under the newly passed state law, House Bill 271, the county's contact quarantine policies constitute an order or regulation under that new law. And as such, it is subject to, number one, a requirement that the county health department provide a statement to the council, the governing body, the council, as to the reasons and the need for the quarantine. And it also includes requirement of approval of the council within 30 days. Otherwise, those regulations or rules expire. I would argue to you that as of today, that quarantine policy of St. Charles County Health Department under 271 is expired. It is null and void as of today. And finally, we know that other counties, of course, Jefferson County, as some have mentioned, have instituted New Madrid, Neosho, Windsor School District, and Jeff County have deviated from this draconian quarantine policy that this county has put in place. Some have asked, what would I do? What I would do is what Iowa has done, which is to say sick kids should go home and be quarantined. The schools should be monitored carefully. If cases exceed 10%, the department should look at it. But Iowa got rid of student contact quarantines altogether, and they don't have a mask mandate either. But I thank you all for your attention this evening, and I appreciate your concern on this issue.
You know, Bob, one thing looking at this, the statute for penalties is 192.320. It was established in 1978.
Right.
So I'm going to challenge you at the state level. These things need to be updated, okay?
You're saying
also, in Steve's, your letter to the health director, CSR 20-2050 requires isolation of a patient with communicable disease and quarantine of contacts. That could be applicable to the common cold. So when these laws were wrote 40 years ago, we didn't have a disease like this disease.
Yep.
So we've got to do some updates. We've got to do some changes. And I understand where the health professionals are, but I also understand where the parents are that have multiple quarantines. I have a lady call me and crying on the phone because she was going to lose her job and she was worried about them losing the house because somebody had to stay home with the kid because he couldn't go to school. We got to stop that. We got to figure something out better than that. Okay?
Yeah, Councilman Cronin, I think that, you have a good point, that one of the problems we have, and this is where we could use some clarification from the Department of Health and Senior Services, is that in 1920-20.020, the department merely added COVID-19 to the list of other reportable diseases, which included smallpox and polio, river blindness, Chagas disease, and weaponized anthrax and botulinum toxin. I would submit to you that common sense would tell us that, sure, we should report all these, but how you deal with those in terms of quarantine and contact tracing varies dramatically, whether that one case of smallpox escapes from the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia, versus a respiratory virus that's already affected 55,000 St. Charles Countyans and 800,000 Missourians. So, no, I think this definitely needs more attention by the department, but I think it's very clear under current law the intent of the General Assembly is that these county health departments are no longer unelected dictators. They are accountable to all of you, the elected body of this county. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
I was going to do an addendum to the subsequent before his.
Yes,
May I inquire the senator?
you may.
Senator, we're studying your letter very carefully and hope to get a response, a
Sure,
formal
thank you.
response to you tomorrow or the next day.
Thank you.
Do you have any idea, and you followed and you saw the letter we sent, do you have any idea why the director didn't say, just go ahead and do it?
Yeah. Well, as you know,
Because we asked him to go ahead and do, and this was
Yeah,
something
as you-
that the superintendents all wanted us to do,
Yeah.
and we agreed to do it.
Yeah.
And we were hoping he'd say, sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, really good point. And as you know, Executive Ailman, the Department of Health and Senior Services and others in Jeff City have been less than clear in giving us guidance. But I would submit, with all due respect to the department, and of course they went from an acting director to now a permanent director and so on. But honestly, I think it would help that they clarify. But in some sense, it doesn't matter, because I would contend that rules that pertain to openings and use of public accommodations, including schools, are already, as of today, accountable to the local governing body, which means this council right here. So again, by all means, if we can get DHSS and the county and the health department and the school districts all in sync, that's great. But ultimately, I think that the intent of the legislation, House Bill 271, is clear. And in two separate lawsuits, the Attorney General of the state of Missouri used very similar reasoning in the St. Louis County mask mandate case and in the Columbia school mask mandate case.
I understand, Senator. Now, one question, though, two weeks ago when you were here, you didn't raise the 271 issue then. Is there some reason why you did not?
I think I did. I could go back and listen to the
Well,
transcript.
I thought you did.
But I think...
We'll check.
You did.
Did I?
No,
Okay.
we'll check. I'll let you know if I'm wrong.
Okay.
And then just two other quick questions. Have you thought about asking Jay Carr to have a hearing and get the director in here and ask him to clarify?
So as you remember,
And Jay Carr is the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules, and the senator's a member.
The Joint Committee on Administrative Rules usually looks at rules as they are proposed and as they're promulgated. And as you know, there's a procedure if Jay Carr disapproves of a rule, that it goes to the General Assembly and so on. But for a rule that's been a year long standing, I'm not sure we still have jurisdiction. And really, I don't think there's necessarily 020, 040, 050 that we're alluding to. Again, I think there is flexibility in those rules beyond what this county is.
How about an AG opinion?
That'd be great. I really
I think only you can ask. I don't think we can.
I could ask for that. And I know one of the two cases I alluded to was written by John Sauer. I could give John a call tomorrow morning.
Okay, and last thing. Is, well, again, let's keep working together on this. And
Very
try
good.
to- Hopefully we'll find something out from the director in the next few days. And hopefully this can all become a moot point. If they pass a state rule change that says, they give us total local control, or they give us something more than we got, hopefully this issue will be over.
Yeah. Yeah, but as you know, Section 6 of 67.265 is pretty clear that now their rules are subject to what we do here in this council.
Last thing, if we're wrong, okay, if we were to do what you are asking us to do and have been asking us to do, and we were wrong about it, do you know the remedies that DHSS potentially has against us?
First of all, the DHSS would have to go to the Attorney General and ask them to file suit, and the interpretation of 67.265 in two other lawsuits, one of which the Circuit Court in St. Louis County, Judge Roboto agreed with, would indicate that I'm not wrong.
Okay, and I'm sure you're going to
I'm sure you're going to deal with this, but would you look at three aspects of this? First of all, if they disagree with what we do, they can withhold our funding, which is about $500,000 a year. Now, I know, they probably won't, I know.
No, more likely,
And-
you're a lawyer too, more likely they would get an injunction and join us and
I
so
know.
on.
And the other thing they can do is actually come and take over the duties of our health department, which is the last thing we would want to see. But here's the thing that really bothers me. Do you know if the health director disobeys what they're saying, that the prosecuting attorney could charge her with a Class B misdemeanor? And that is really unfair, because we've got, people may not like our health department, our director, but these are people, they're merit employees, and they're trying to do the right thing. And I just want everybody to know that there are some penalties there.
Well, I don't, and again, I think there are penalties for, I don't see criminal penalties in 19 CSR.
I hope you're right.
20-20-040. I don't see them.
I hope you're right, and thank you for working
you.
on this.
I'd like to make the motion to table with the understanding that we wait to see what the county health, state health director comes back with, okay? The second thing I would like to do is I would like to work with the executive to try to come up with a reasonable, balanced health board to give this council advice on the COVID matters in the future. That's what I would like to do, okay?
So Mr. Cronin had already
Motion
made
table,
that
yes.
motion. Mr. White had already seconded that motion. So that is the motion that is on the floor right now. Mr. Brazel, I would submit to you, there's no reason to submit an addendum to this particular resolution if it's going to be tabled, because if it is, it's going to be tabled whether you submit that amendment or not. And you're welcome
It
to,
was making it more clear, because I got some emails on the second whereas, where it says the individual school boards and administrators are better situated than the county health department. I was gonna have that second whereas removed.
Strike it.
Striking, because then most of the emails I got were people who were like, well, we understand what you're doing, but we don't want the administrators in the school to make those decisions, so I just want to take it out completely.
That's exactly, Mr. Brazel, sometimes we don't agree, but I had that underlined right here. It says, "School boards and administrators are better situated than county health." Okay? Well, first of all, they're not better qualified, and they're not better educated, okay? But, having spent my life in public schools and have dealt with school boards, the last thing any school board member wants to be asked is to become a public health expert, all right? They don't want this, all right? So, the point here is that, I think that part of the resolution is, pretty misguided,
Right, I agree.
for a couple of,
I would just like to
those
remove that,
particular
even if
reasons.
it's on the tape, just so it looks a little bit better. It just doesn't look good with that in there. So
Now-
that's my motion. I had the motion prior to his, actually, I said, so my motion is to remove the second whereas from the resolution, and then go from there.
so, Mr. Cronin, would you be willing to remove?
Sure.
So Mr. Cronin's got to remove his motion, which is
Yes.
currently on the table. Okay, Mr. White? So that is done. So now, Mr. Brazel, you can make your
I'd like to
motion.
make a motion to remove the second whereas from the resolution and just eliminate it in its entirety.
I have a motion there. Do I have a second?
Second.
There's a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Your resolution has been amended. Now, Mr. Cronin.
I'd like to make a motion to table it till we get the results from the state health director and we explore forming a county health advisory board.
So there's a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second
Can
from
we have
Mr. White.
conversation on the
Discussion.
motion? Could- Please.
Yes, sir.
Okay, first of all, Joe, I do appreciate the fact that you co-sponsored this bill with me. I don't agree with tabling it. However, I understand your perspective. But I certainly don't agree with setting up any kind of boards. This is our job to be the board. We're elected. You have these boards and all you're doing is expanding government, and that never ends up good. So we don't need any health boards. We're elected to represent every person in our district, so we're the board. And that's what House Bill 271 does. It makes us vote on this stuff. So that's not part of I understand. I just wanted to make that point. I'm not in favor of tabling it, but obviously I'm not going to prevail, so.
Mr. Cronin.
We have boards to decide how we run our Parks Department, and they do a darn good job because we have a darn good Parks Department. We have boards to give us advice on building regulations because we're not builders and those guys are, okay, and they give us recommendations. We have boards for planning and zoning issues. There's a multitude of county boards. Board is...
Hey, quiet.
Hey,
Quiet.
Those boards exist for a reason. They exist to give us advice. Doesn't mean they're binding. They give us advice. This is probably one of the most important issues that's coming before county government for the next year, how long, okay? If we don't get better advice than what we're getting, I don't like getting advice strictly from the county health director. I like to hear it. I hear it also from a lot of parents. I hear a lot of advice from a lot of people, but a board is a good thing. So if y'all don't want a board, I get it, okay? Before we spend the efforts to do it, though, I think, what's the council's, do you think it's a good idea to get expert advice from people on both sides of the spectrum? That's exactly what the state health director is saying. He's saying he's having conversations with schools and health professionals.
So right now, the motion on the floor is to table this particular bill.
Yeah.
Is there any other discussion on that right now? Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to wonder if you might want to remove that part about the board and go ahead and just go with the motion to table the resolution. Then, after we see what happens between now and the next time it's on, we can bring up the issue of a board. I think we probably need to think about that a little bit more before we
Sure.
move forward with something of that nature.
Yep.
So that would be my suggestion.
Yep, I'm good with that.
So Mr. Cronin would like to amend his motion to remove the advisory board and just table the current resolution
Right.
as amended by Mr. Brazel. Is
And
that
then-
correct?
Yes, and then depending on what the state health director comes back to, we can decide whether we want to talk about a health board at next meeting or not.
I appreciate that, but with all due respect, all we really need to do is table it, and you can do
Gotcha.
whatever in the
Yep.
next 2 weeks. So I appreciate all the reasoning. So I have an amended motion. Do I have an amended second?
Second.
I have an amended second. All those in favor of tabling this bill, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Yes.
So it is tabled. With that, we will move on to bills for final passage. Bill number 4990.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
at the request of the applicant.
Hang on, hold, please. She has to read the bill
Oh,
first.
before I, okay, sorry.
What did he say?
I'm losing my way here.
Over 80% of the donated blood, you most likely will have antibodies in it.
Yeah, that's what it's true. You should read this.
Is it in there?
Yeah.
I know somebody personally who just verified it.
So we'll pause for a couple of minutes while the room clears. Hi, Bobby. So we'll give it a couple more seconds to clear out. All right, Claire, now, would you read Bill number 4990, please?
Bill number 4990. An ordinance vacating an unused portion of Newstetter Road lying south from its intersection with Peru Creek Road to the south line of the northeast quarter of Section 10, Township 47 North, Range 3 East pursuant to Section 228.110 Revised Statutes of Missouri.
Councilwoman.
Chairman, I spoke with the applicant this evening before we started the meeting, and he confirmed that he was requesting that we table this bill until they complete a final survey of the property. So for that reason, my motion is to table Bill 4990.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Bill number 4990 is tabled. Move on to Bill number 4991.
Bill number 4991, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an agreement between St. Charles County and the city of Wentzville for the purpose of transferring ownership and maintenance of a weather warning sign and appurtenances.
Any questions or comments on this bill? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bill number 4991, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an agreement between St. Charles County and the city of Wentzville for the purpose of transferring ownership and maintenance of a weather warning siren and appurtenances. Councilman Hammond?
Yes.
Councilman Elam?
Yes.
Councilman Hollander?
Yes.
Councilwoman Schneider?
Yes.
Councilman White?
Yes.
Councilman Cronin?
Yes.
Councilman Brazel?
Yes.
Bill number 4991 passes. We'll move on to bills for introduction, starting with 4993.
Bill number 4993, requested by Mike Hurlbert, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance amending the zoning district map of the County of St. Charles, Missouri by rezoning land from A Agricultural District to AT Agricultural Tourism District per application RZ 21-14.
Mr. Brazel? Yes, where's Robert? Is he here?
I think Robert stepped in the back
Or
to
Mike,
allow
maybe
Zoom
Mike.
earlier.
It's just introduction, we can,
No, well, I was going to ask about infrastructure real quick. Mike?
And the applicant's here if you have questions as well.
Yeah.
Could have asked him.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
On sewage.
Either one of you come up. You don't have to be sworn in for this
Just so
one.
you guys know, I never met with this group, but I did, I mentioned to Mr. Hoffman on the phone. I never met him either.
Sure.
But the location was being bounced and forth, back and forth, Balducci Winery, this winery, that winery. They were gonna have problems with infrastructure. I suggested the 50 acres or whatever it is, 70 acres in the center of town, which is the best location. But what about on the sewage and the water, where's that coming from? Is that coming from Duckett Creek or with their plant?
Do I need to be sworn in again? Or?
You do
No,
not. You're
no,
good to
no.
go.
This is
Elliot,
not.
Elliot Reed with Cochran Engineering, 538 East Independence Drive. The water and the sewer is by Public Water Number 2.
Or District 2?
Yep.
The water and the sewer?
Water and
So when
sewer both.
someone's mentioned about the lagoon, I know what she's talking about, it's down by the river, and I never smell an odor when I ride my bike down there. And it does service the whole town, but 60 more rooms, whatever the numbers are. The wineries, well, I guess none of the wineries, well, Bloomhoff is probably hooked up. No, not Bloomhoff, the one in the center of town is probably hooked up to it, I assume.
Mount Pleasant?
Mount Pleasant, yeah.
We've been in talks with Number 2, both for the water and the sewer side. And if we need to expand the plant, we will
So
as
that's
part
what
of, as part of the project. for
That's what
sure.
I'm saying.
Mhm.
You got the capabilities to expand it.
Yeah.
And the water, and Bob Struckoff, the fire chief, was concerned about water pressure. You guys got that all covered about the fire, right, with the
We
tower?
will, yes. That's all in design, yes.
Okay, so this has been talked about a lot. It's not that I'm not asking a lot of questions, but we've had this going on for a long time.
For sure. Yeah, Number 2 has public mains both along 94 and along Church Street.
Mike, Rob, do you guys got any concerns or questions or anything? Okay, I'm done.
You good? All right. Thanks very much. So
Thank
we
you.
will vote on this in 2 weeks
weeks.
from today.
Yep.
Just so you know. You guys are good. Bill number 4994.
Bill number 4994, requested by Mike Hurlbert, sponsored by Joe Brazel. An ordinance amending the zoning district map of the County of St. Charles, Missouri by rezoning land from A Agricultural District to R3B Multifamily District and R1E Single Family Residential District per application RZ 21-15.
Mr. Brazel?
This again is a big development, but it is on Highway N. It is in a development zone. So they are doing multifamily on Highway N, right? And it's, it gets, as you go farther down, yeah. So it seems to fit the master plan. It seems to be okay. Of course, people aren't happy with it, but it does fit our master plan.
Okay. Could you come up real quick? So the only thing I'm curious about, this is part of that, so you're going to be there and McBride's going to be there, and this is the 900 home subdivision, right?
No, this is the 418 units.
Oh, I'm sorry.
McBride is a separate development that will be to the east of us.
So-
Our roads will connect into their development and give access over to Hopewell, and then we'll have also access on Highway N from our development as well.
Gotcha. So I believe McBride just tried to get they just annexed into O'Fallon,
They annexed into
correct?
O'Fallon, correct.
So I was curious, why didn't you guys
We
annex as well?
So we did have discussions with O'Fallon, and at the time, they were still up in the air on whether they wanted more residential or not in their city at that time, which is why we came to the county.
Okay.
We
I was
never-
just curious if there was a reason, because it
Yeah.
seemed like the development's going together.
Yep.
So I thought it was interesting that part of the development's going to O'Fallon, part of it's not. And I was just
Yeah.
curious why
Two separate
Lombardo
different
chose not to.
developers, two separate pieces of ground.
Okay.
So that's why they're being separated.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yeah, the thing is there's developments from the cities that are very similar to what they're doing, so I figure it's only kind of fair game, you know.
Makes sense. It's not 5 acres, I'm just
It's
telling
not
you.
5 acres, and I told them.
He did. I got 5 acres though, down on 94 coming.
Hey, I shouldn't have poked that bear, man. Let's just let that go. All right, so, again, we'll vote on this in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
So that gives us to bill number 4995.
Bill number 4995, requested by Bob Schnur, sponsored by Mike Elam. An ordinance fixing and establishing the rate and levying of taxes for the General Revenue Fund and for various special funds of and for the County of St. Charles, Missouri for the year 2021.
Any questions, Mr. Cronin?
Bob, you don't have to get up. I just ask you, the tax rates are going down, I'm assuming because of statutory limits, okay? Are we still at the maximum on both of all those funds for the statutory limit? Yes. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
All right.
Didn't
Any
even
other
make you get
questions? Comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to bill number 4996.
Next meeting.
Keep going.
Bill number 4996, requested by Craig Tykowski, sponsored by Nancy Schneider. An ordinance authorizing execution of an agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission to authorize acceptance of a grant not to exceed $23,000 pursuant to project number 21-111A-1.
Any questions or comments about this? Mr. Cronin?
No, I have nothing.
Okay. Seeing none, that wraps up bills for introduction. Any action to be taken on any tabled bills? Seeing none, that brings us to announcements and miscellaneous. Any and all? I think everybody's kind of toasted at this point. Just guessing, but thanks for the 6 of you who are still in the room. Representative, it was good to see you tonight. I'm assuming you're here as representative and not as mayor, but you could be here as both. There you go. That works. So with that, I would entertain a motion to dismiss. Motion to dismiss. There's a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are dismissed.